my guide to Good Omens, and this week we're talking about my favourite books of these two authors, of Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, because obviously they're the ones who wrote Good Omens and I wouldn't be doing this video series without them, so I thought I'd big up a couple of their other books that I really enjoyed. I'm going to start with their only joint venture here and say read Good Omens, because obviously it's Good Omens and this series wouldn't be being made unless there was a TV series adapted from this book. So naturally, if you are interested in these two authors, a great place to start is Good Omens, because it's by both of them. So if you've only ever really read one author and you want to get into the other one, I think this would be a good way to start, because it's a really nice, good blend of their two writing styles. So I'd highly recommend this one, obviously. I'm going to start properly though with Neil Gaiman, because I've actually only got two for this, because quite frankly, I am ashamed to say that I have not read that many Neil Gaiman books. I've got a couple on this shelf here, but to be honest, I keep on forgetting to read them because I've got all of the rest of this to get through and the Discworld, and quite frankly Discworld is kind of taking a bit more of a priority alongside the rest of my new shiny books, and I keep on forgetting Neil Gaiman sort of is on my shelf. It's a New Year's resolution or mid-year resolution at this point to try and read more of his books, but in saying that, the two books I have read I have really enjoyed, and the first one I read was Neverwhere. Now this one is a story all about the hidden world inside of London and how a normal guy gets caught up in it, and it is fantastic. I read this book a couple of years ago, and quite frankly, ever since, every time I go to London, I just think about this book, because it's got such clever things in there, like the Earl's Court, where it's actually the court of an earl inside of a train and stuff like this. So every single time I hear Earl's Court, I think of the Earl's Court and stuff like this, and it's so brilliantly woven into the actual London, and the characters are just so real that I got completely swept up in this book. I really badly want to reread this one because it's been a couple of years, but I do want to get through a few more books on these shelves first. But as soon as I start rereading books properly, this is high on the list just so I can relive it again, because it was absolutely wonderful. And the other Neil Gaiman book I'm mentioning has to be American Gods. Now I read this last year and it actually ended up as one of my top 10 reads of last year. It was incredible how this book weaved together so many gods from so many religions while also creating new ones to fit a modern time was incredible, and it was so well written that I actually sort of felt like all of these gods were actually converging in America for the war that goes on in this. I was in awe of this book and its creativity and everything about it. I flew through this in like 3 days, despite the fact that it is actually a real brick of a book. It was incredible and I absolutely loved reading this. I didn't like the TV show though, I have to say. The TV show adaptation, I got 3 episodes in and gave up on, but the actual physical book is incredible, and I highly recommend this if you want to get into Neil Gaiman. And who would I be if I wasn't mentioning Marvel 1602 when recommending Neil Gaiman books? Because Marvel 1602 was obviously one of like my actual favourite comic of all time until I read House of M, but it's still one of my absolute all-time favourite comics ever. It'll always hold a special place in my heart anyway, because it was one of the first I read. But how Neil Gaiman weaved the Marvel characters of like Doctor Strange, Bruce Banner, Peter Parker, people like that into the time of 1602 while keeping them exactly the same as their modern counterparts, while also making them like contemporary for their time, was mind-blowing. I loved that comic. I screamed the whole way through with the references and the characters who were hidden inside this comic and everything. It was amazing, and I cannot tell you how much I love that comic. It is incredible. So if you are a Marvel fan and you want to get into Neil Gaiman, definitely go for that one. Or the Eternals. I don't physically own the Eternals and I haven't actually physically read it yet, but seriously, I am so excited to read the Eternals when I eventually get it. It looks incredible, and I trust Neil Gaiman with Marvel Comics entirely. And thinking about it, if I am talking about Neil Gaiman comics, I have to mention The Sandman. I am only 3 volumes in, but I am thoroughly enjoying myself. It's really weird, and it's definitely not for anybody who's like, if you're not a Deadpool fan, I'll say, if you're not a fan of blood and guts and gore sort of Deadpool style, definitely stay away from The Sandman. But if you love that kind of stuff, you're in. It is an amazing mind bend of a comic, and if you are a fan of Netflix's Lucifer, you will love this comic because he actually turns up in it. It's a very loose adaptation from the comic as the TV show, but it is still incredible, and it's really interesting to see where that version of Lucifer came from. Now on to Terry Pratchett, because obviously I am not missing this chance to talk about Terry Pratchett books. So there's a few on here you are definitely going to be like, oh, she's talking about it again, but there are a couple that I haven't mentioned that much on this channel, so let's dive into Terry Pratchett books. Now with Terry Pratchett, I am going to preface this and say that I am only going to be talking about the Discworld here, because I haven't read any of Terry Pratchett's books outside of the Discworld, because to be honest, I'm not that interested in them at this moment in time. There may be others that I will be interested in the future, but at the moment I just want to focus on the Discworld. And if you're not sure what the actual Discworld is, it is a fantasy world that is a turtle called Artuin flying through space with 4 elephants on top of it, and on top of it is the Discworld. It's basically a flat disc on top of the elephants, which are on top of the turtle flying through space. And if that doesn't tell you how weird this series is, I don't know what will. It is definitely a weird series, but it is absolutely hilarious because it's sort of like our world, but things are slightly twisted in a slightly more darker sense of humour kind of way, but with magic and dragons and all of that fun stuff. I'm going to start off with my favourite Discworld novel, which was also the first one I read, and that is The Hogfather. Now, this one is all about one Hogswatch Eve when the Hogfather goes missing. Now, Hogswatch and the Hogfather are basically Christmas and Santa for the Discworld, only the Hogfather is obviously a bit more hoggy, if you can see on that front cover, and his slate is drawn by hogs, so it's sort of similar but slightly different, like I said, like our world but twisted a bit. And with this, the Hogfather goes missing one Hogswatch Eve, obviously Christmas Eve, and if he doesn't deliver the presents and the children stop believing in the Hogfather, that means there will be no sunrise in the morning. And so Death, as in the guy with the scythe, and his assistant Albert literally dress up as the Hogfather and an elf and deliver the presents to the children of the Discworld, while Death's granddaughter Susan has to hunt down exactly what happened to the Hogfather, while the assassin Mr. Tea Time, or Mr. Tia Tame, is trying to kill the Hogfather. And it is an absolutely brilliant book. I read this every single year at Christmas. I watch the adaptation every single year at Christmas, and it is a very faithful adaptation. If you have read the book and you do want to check out the adaptation to it, it's an absolutely brilliant book. It is hilarious in places with exactly what Death gets up to, because he's trying to be jolly and happy and all the rest of it, and he's Death, you know, he doesn't quite get humanity, no matter how much he tries, and it is hilarious seeing the things he gets up to in this book while Susan tries to sort everything out. It is a brilliant book, a brilliant guide into Discworld, and even though this isn't the first book in the series, I do highly recommend it, because I started with this one and I was fine. I should probably note with the Discworld as well that you can actually start at any point at any book in the Discworld and you will still understand what's going on, because even though it follows similar sort of characters, not every single book follows the exact same characters. You do get a couple of characters like Death, Moist von Litwig, Susan and Rincewind turn up in quite a lot of the books, but at the same time you still get a full introduction to each of these characters and the Discworld in every single book. So if you want to pick, say, the Hogfather to start with, but you think that's book 20, you should probably leave it. You'll be fine, I assure you. But if you do want to start at the beginning and go through in chronological order, which could be easier than just picking and choosing like I am, go for The Colour of Magic, because this is the first Discworld novel ever made, and I admittedly haven't read this one. I know, it's shameful. I'm a big Terry Pratchett fan and I haven't read The Colour of Magic or The Light Fantastic yet, but I have watched the adaptation, which again is very faithful according to basically everybody who loves the book and has watched the adaptation. Because this book follows Rincewind, who is basically the most failed magician ever, as he tries to take Ankh-Morpork's first tourist around Ankh-Morpork. And Ankh-Morpork is the biggest city of the Discworld. It's where most of the books are set. So as long as you know Ankh-Morpork, biggest city in the Discworld, most likely to be where the book's set, you'll be fine. And this one follows their adventures as they try desperately to A, not get kicked out of Ankh-Morpork, and B, encourage more tourists to go there. And C, try not to die, because they run into dragons in this one and its sequel, The Light Fantastic, and just generally get into a hell of a lot of trouble. This book even includes sentient luggage that actually has multiple legs. So if you do want to get into the Discworld, I do recommend this one and its sequel, The Light Fantastic, if you want to read in chronological order. But like I said, you can start anywhere and you won't have an issue. Next one I have to mention is Guards, because this is the first one in the Night's Watchman series, because all of these characters do get split off into their own mini-series. So if you just want to follow, say, Death or the Night's Watchman or the Rincewind or something like that, you can easily do that. It's all listed on Goodreads. I'll leave a link down below. But this one follows the Night's Watchmen, which are basically Discworld police, or at least Ankh-Morpork police, and they're rather corrupt, but they're kind of funny at the same time, because you have people like Corporal Nobby Nobbs, who is sort of human. They're not entirely sure what he is, to be honest, and he quite likes getting drunk and stealing. He turns up in quite a lot of these books, even when they're not Night Watchman books, and I just find him really funny and a really entertaining character to follow. Also in this, you have Corporal Carrot, who is a bit on the stupid side, but also really lovable. And you also meet in this book Lord Vetinari, who is possibly a vampire, slightly evil, and slightly power hungry, and is an absolutely brilliant character. I adore Lord Vetinari. He doesn't just turn up in the Night Watchman series, he does turn up in quite a lot of the stuff, like Corporal Nobby Nobbs. So if you do want to know a bit more about the policing system in Ankh-Morpork, or if you just want to know a bit more about Lord Vetinari, Guards is the place to go. And also, if you want to read about dragons, go for Guards, because there's a dragon in this. Well, actually, there's several dragons in this, and it causes a lot of trouble. But if Phil Grace more your thing, definitely go for the Tiffany Aching series, which starts with The We Free Men. And this series is all about Tiffany Aching, who is a little girl who ends up trying to save her brother from the Queen of Fairies armed with a frying pan, until she meets the Knack-Mack Feegle, who are these characters here. They are essentially tiny blue Scottish drunk violent pixie kind of things, and they get her into a whole load of trouble while also trying to help her get her brother back, and they are really quite funny, if I am honest. What I will say about this book first though is, if you are dyslexic, you may struggle a little bit with this one, because everything the Knack-Mack Feegle say is spelt phonetically to make it sound more Scottish, which I really struggle to read personally. I am no good at reading anything that is spelled phonetically, especially when it's this often. I'm fine with, say, Hagrid and Harry Potter, but this I really struggled with. So I will keep that in mind if you have trouble with that. But the audiobook, which I have heard in pieces when my mum's had it on over the years, is hilarious, and the actor does a really good job with it. But in saying that, this is still a really fun read. It's a great place to start with the Discworld that isn't too heavy on the whole world of the Discworld or anything like that. So if you want to start quite small and work your way up, no pun intended, go for the We Free Men and the rest of the Tiffany Aching series. And the final one I'm mentioning has to be Going Postal. Now this is the only one that has been adapted as I am talking. They are making a Night Watchman series, but considering what I've heard about it, I'm slightly worried, and I'm withholding judgment till I find out casting and the rest of the details, but I'm slightly worried about it. But this is the last one of the truly accurate adaptations that Sky One did, and it is really quite fun actually, because this one is all about Moist von Lipwig, who is a con man after he has been sentenced to death by Lord Vetinari, because obviously he's a con man and he wasn't part of a guild. I don't think there is a con man's guild. I've never heard of it, but there may be. But he is sentenced to death. So when he wakes up after his execution in Lord Vetinari's office, he's slightly confused. But then he is given two options. One, actually be executed, or two, resurrect the post office, which has been down for hundreds of years and instead has been replaced by the clacks, which is sort of like big towers that send out light messages, but it always gets jammed. Everybody keeps on dying on the rigs, and it's just generally a very bad practice. So Moist von Lipwig decides to run the post office, and this is all about how he tries to con his way out of rebuilding the post office while also learning a lot about himself and how business actually runs and how to be a legitimate businessman, and it's absolutely brilliant. I will say though that this was being written around the time that Terry Pratchett started getting ill with his dementia, which is a bit sad, I guess, because it's not up to Terry Pratchett's usual standards, but I will say it is still an absolutely brilliant book. It's a bit chunky, but it is definitely worth the read if you want to read about con men and golems and more about Lord Vetinari, because this is a very Lord Vetinari heavy book. And that is all my recommendations for Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below with your favourite book from either of these authors. I'd love to know, and I need to know which one to prioritise next. I'll also leave a link down below to all of my social media if you want to check out. If you want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time, guys, bye!